So, hey guys, my name is Jonathan Weinberger. I'm an authorized Unity instructor. You may be wondering what is an authorized Unity instructor, and I've partnered with Unity Technologies to create a series of courses designed to help with the onboarding process for new developers and experienced developers into Unity. Essentially, I'm like a glorified evangelist for them. I've been working in the games industry for about 9 years. I'm a completely self-taught software engineer. I've worked for companies like Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. And then I moved my way through to the corporate world, working for Coca-Cola, AT&T, ThyssenKrupp, developing enterprise augmented reality applications. So today, I'm here with Al Heck, who's worked in the motion graphics industry for about 15 years. Al's worked for MGM Resorts, and he's led teams to develop all sorts of advertisements on the Strip, in-floor, in-house, and all throughout the casinos. So he also formed a company called Render Ready LLC, and they provide services to companies like MGM, Pepsi, Deloitte, and recently the Vegas Knights. So they do a lot of VFX work. So together, we've formed a community called Game Dev HQ, which is designed to be a resource community dedicated to the success of indie game developers. We have an active, growing community of over 30,000 students across 152 countries, and we provide them with resources to get them into the games industry, from the Unity pipeline to the art pipeline to most recently the audio pipeline. We have live AMAs, we have dev blogs, we have game jams. Everything happens that is to bring our expertise and knowledge to those interested in the games industry. So some of the things we've done in the past is we've had people like game designers from RuneScape, GTA designers from Grand Theft Auto, and they come on and they tell our students what it takes to land a role in that field. We have a Discord community with several thousand active students who all participate in one goal of making it in the games industry, and we use it for support, so surveyor feedback, and pretty much stay in touch with our students. So today, what you're going to be doing is we've teamed up with Maxon to introduce the world of film and VFX to the games industry. You're going to be walking through the game art creation pipeline in Cinema 4D, and you're going to see how effectively we can use Cinema 4D to handle UV mapping, animation, as well as the ability to paint textures using body paint, and pretty much do the entire game art pipeline within one program, and then seamlessly bring it over into Unity, and we'll bring it to life at the end. So Al, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much. All right, let's start off with Red Dead Redemption 2 and work from there. No, I'm sorry. That was a bad joke. Let's start off easy. So what I like to do is let's talk about what we're going to be building today. We're going to go into Unity and go ahead and press play. We can even maximize. And we're going to do this little project right here. We're going to take this character from Cinema 4D, bring him into Unity, and he's got some simple scripts attached to him, et cetera, et cetera. We got this box right here, and we're going to bring our character over, and all he's going to do is he's going to locate, he's going to see it, and he's going to smash it. And we're going to use a couple things in Cinema 4D, like Voronoi Fracture, to break all this stuff up, et cetera, et cetera. But what we really want to do is just talk to you simply about how do we bring a character in from Cinema 4D and get him into Unity. So a little bit of talk about the pipeline that we're going to use. Usually when I build game art for Cinema, I do these things. I model it, I UV unwrap it, I sculpt it, I paint it. I can then go back to sculpting, back to painting. You can apply hair, you can rig it, you put animations into it, mocap, anything like that, simulations, and then export it out into FBX. Now, a lot of people get stuck on these three, which is UV mapping, sculpting, and body paint. And I kind of wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about those situations and how we can focus in on those to make your asset development pipeline a little faster. So to start, I want to talk simply about UV mapping. So I'm going to start with this first scene. All right, so let's start off, and I want to talk about this mainly because a lot of people who use Cinema 4D are VisFX masters. They're MoGraph masters. They're guys who just, got into it for the art scene, and they want to get into video games. That's a field that's really exciting for them, and I want to show them some of the workflows that are important so that they can take their talents and apply them into video games. And the first thing we need to really understand is what is UV unwrapping and UV unwrap mapping. So the technical definition is that 3D modeling, UV mapping is the 3D modeling process of projecting a 2D image to a 3D model surface, and then unwrapping is the process of actually unfolding it to create a 2D texture which fits into the 3D game object. Now, why is UV unwrapping important? Well, it's great for body paint. You can kind of almost picture it like if you are ironing your shirt, you don't want your shirt to just go right on it and then just throw the iron on top of it. It's going to cause wrinkles. It's going to cause overlaps. It's not going to cause an equal distribution. You want to create UV islands and basically spread everything around so you get this nice UV mesh that you can paint onto. So I created a little bit of a custom layout for myself to do my UV edits. And if you drag this into here, this is what you guys probably normally see when you're doing UV mapping, is this crazy little thing on the side, and it's a little difficult to work with. So let me show you a little bit about this layout. On the left side, this has everything to do right here with your polygons. So this is your polygon selection on this side. You see how your UVs highlight. These buttons right here are your UV selections on your right side, and you can see how they highlight. This side does not work with this side very well, because if I hit E over here, E over here, your UVs will not move. And if I select polygons on this side, I can move over here, but if I try to move anything on this side, doesn't work. So, real easy to understand. Your left side is all about your polygon selection. Your right side is all about your UV selection. You want to keep those two separated at all times. So, what I want to focus in on are some of the options for your UV unwrapping. Now, most people, when they go into here, they usually hit like box or cubic and split things up. Here's the idea behind this. Cinema 4D is going to use these objects and try to project its UV based on the shape. So if you say it's a sphere, it's going to assume that your object is a sphere. So it's going to unwrap it like a sphere. It's going to acknowledge there's a slice in it in the middle somewhere, and it's going to split it up. If it's a cylinder, you notice how it kind of unwraps it like if they placed a cylinder inside of it and unwrapped it. And the tops are going to be small and the bottoms are going to be small. And if it's like, say, a box, it's going to assume it's like a six-sided box, and it's going to project it and cut it up like that. When it comes to organic stuff, we don't want to unwrap our stuff like that. It gets really ugly and messy. So what I want to do is be a little more selective on how I unwrap this piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by going to a frontal projection. And the reason why we do a frontal projection is there's no breaking of your UV seams. It keeps it all seamless. And from here, we're going to use this loop tool. Now, you guys have used this loop tool before. You can do these selections on here and highlight things. I'm going to do the pants. So I'm going to do a UV select, and that's going to do a loop all around my object underneath the pants. Then there's this little tool right here called Fill Selection. If I hold Shift, I can select my entire pant section. And then I put these little buttons up here, these really cool little buttons. So one says Hide Selected, which if I press that, it hides the current objects, Unhide All, and Hide Unselected. So I'm going to do a quick UI, and you could press E in this UV mode and move it on over. But in this mode, I'm just going to do a Hide Unselected. And it's just going to hide everything that I don't want to worry about at this point, because you want to do these in phases. And then I can go to my Loop tool, and I can use a Spline selection. So now you can kind of go through and see, where do I want to cut? So usually, I want to cut, let's say, my hip right here. And I want to create maybe using a path selection and holding Shift, I want to create a path that I can draw, and I'm going to split my mesh in half right there. And let's say I just want to split my mesh by drawing a straight line. Oops. All the way down. Oh. Let me try drawing that one more time again. All the way down the side of this leg. Let's say on that leg right there. And let's say on this leg right here. Let's go right here. And then I can do another loop selection and select my ankles. And then I can select my feet. And I can add a little slice, maybe in the back of the heels, so those unfold correctly. And this is going to help us create our little UV islands. We're just going to kind of slice this up, and we can test this a couple different ways, but it's going to help us generate this UV island mesh. And then all we need to do at this point, and you could kind of see that we could swap between these different modes and nothing really changes. But if we go to our frontal mode and we project our frontal, it will realign our UV mesh. Once that's done, all we have to go to do is relax UVs. And you just got to turn off everything except cut selected edges and hit apply. Now, you see this giant smorgasbord of stuff. Everything's all scaled out of proportion, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't make no sense. But I can tell what I'm looking at. I could see the hip is right here. I could see the thighs are right here. I could see my feet are right here. I want this to remap. So instead of hitting like an optimal or a cubic, I just want to hit the realign button. And I can even preserve orientation and hit apply. And you see how Cinema is going to realign all of everything and make sure that all the islands are equalized in size. Now, then you can go in and kind of individually affect everything. But one of the things you notice is that the angles are off. Now, I can hit turn off preserve orientation and let Cinema do a best fit. But sometimes that's not what you want, because you want this, you know, let's say a thigh right here to be this way. And you want it to be like that on your game character. And instead of manually rotating it, that'd be kind of like difficult and challenging. So what you can do is actually go to a pin-to-point selection. So you go to your point mode, and let's say I want to make sure that my thigh is pinned in these areas and they don't move. I can set that up right there. My lines are still here because I haven't unselected it. And I can go back to my frontal mode. Then I can go to my polygon selection, hit projection, frontal. I can relax and choose pinpoint selection. And then if I maintain my preserve orientation, you could see that the thighs lined up based on what the 3D object was in your scene. And this is actually quite fantastic to do. And then you can go in and kind of modify a couple things here and there. Now, let's say that this is too much of a problem. I don't like doing it like this, Al. This is frustrating because I got a model that has a million polygons and a million this and a million that. You know, if you want, you can also just simply select around, let's say, your path, and then do a fill selection in between. And let's say this was the island that you wanted to keep from here on out. So we'll make it a little more proportional. And you know this is as flat as you want to be. All you have to do is hit frontal and then relax and then optimal map it, and you know your island has moved into the right position as well. So UV mapping can actually go really fast. You just pick the sections that you actually want to work on, break it apart, and go from there. So I'm going to show you why this is important, because we want to do body paint. So here I'm going to go to body paint start. Now, if I bring this Marquise model in, you can see that the whole model has been body painted and ready to go. And you want your UVs to be good. If you have bad UVs, body paint's going to fail on you. So that's usually where people get into a lot of trouble. They just hit the cubic and they hope everything works out. You really want to take the time to do some good UV work on here. But once you do, now we can get into painting. So how do we do body paint? Real easy. Go to Create and create a new material. And we call this, let's say, Body Paint Test. And I go ahead and drag this material and drop it onto my character. All I need to do is save my file And let's say I call this body paint working. I turn on body paint by clicking this X. Now, if you don't see this X, it's because you got to turn on Layer Manager Expanded Compact. Once you turn it on, you get this little X right here. If you double click on that, you actually start to create your textures that you can paint on in Cinema 4D. So we want to paint on our color channel, and we want to use a power of 2 texture, 2048 by 2048, 512 by 512. You guys in the game industry know exactly why. And then all you have to do is hit OK. Now it's saved. Now go ahead and save it. And if we go into Finder, and we go to C4D Files, Body Paint Start, you see this right here? I got Body Paint Test Color. That's the file we just created. So let's test this out. I'm going to draw all over this, and I'm going to hit Save. It's going to say, do you want to save those textures of the project to Body Paint Working? Yes. Now let's double check Finder to see if this worked. And if I select this, you could see that now we are painting on our C4D object real quickly. Now, let's go ahead and get creative. I'm sure a lot of you guys have concept design artists out there, or you guys are sketchers and you love drawing and you love this character that you drew. I found one that I really dug, which was this Marquise, who was like from a particular role-playing game, and he looked really good. I love the back, I love the detail, and I said, man, you know, I would love to have this on my video game character. I just don't want to draw it. So I said copy and paste. And then I go here to my background, and I say, hey, I want to do my back texture. I just go ahead and select that, and you can go into a projection mode, and then hit paste. And then from here, you can kind of line up. All right, I want my texture to be this big, et cetera, fit it onto this. And now I'm going to go ahead and grab my eraser, and just like in Photoshop, I'm just going to erase the edges that I'm not really interested in. I'm going to erase up here, up here, up here, and let's get rid of all this stuff down here. Okay? Real easy to do. Nothing too complicated, nothing too sophisticated. Now, all I have to do is hit this checkbox that says Apply Projection. Bam, our projection is done. If I rotate around this character, you see how we just camera projected that image onto one layer. And if I look at my layer, you can see I could turn it on and off. I can lower the opacity. I can even change the modes at which it sits. You can add masks to it, so you can start masking out different elements of it. You can get pretty complex in what you want to do. So let's say for this character, I see these legs right here, and I want to paint these legs in. I can go and create another layer underneath it, taking that texture and just kind of paint something in real fast. Real easy to fill in this character and make something look pretty good. But that's just with a regular color. Now, let's say you have a creative director who says, you know, I don't want to use just paint. I kind of want to use some materials here. I want to build something a little cooler. Okay, no problem with that. So all you have to do is, let's say he says, I got this PBR material right here that I want you to use, Al. And let's see. Let me try to find it for you real quick. Yeah, we got this real quick leather material that we want to apply to our character. All we have to do is go to our material, and let's say we want to apply a couple at the same time. So I'm going to create a bump channel. Go ahead and hit OK, and then I'll save it. And in this bump channel, I'm going to set my color to black. Just like that. So I got these two materials that are ready to go. Now I can go to my colors, and instead of choosing a solid color, I can say I want to choose a texture paint. So let me go ahead and select my bump. I choose texture, and I go, hey, let me load from disk, and I want to use PBR. Let's say my leather normal. And then let's say in my color channel, I want to choose my texture paint, load from disk, and I choose my color. And then in here, I'm going to create another layer in my color channel called, and I'm going to drop this to the top, leather. And then in my bump channel, I'm going to go ahead and add a color called leather. With those selected, you could choose either color on your bump, or if you hold shift, you can color on both. And then once that's done, you can literally start painting in your materials from that texture. And if you don't like the direction that it's going in, well, you can go ahead and adjust the scale. So let's say it needs to be smaller, or you need to adjust the rotation. You can adjust those things, and then in real time, maybe go into your bump and say, man, that intensity is too big. I'd like to bring it down, but now I want to fill in the rest of my character with this texture channel. So that's a quick demonstration of how you can use body paint and start painting in your 3D characters and do something quite fantastic without leaving Cinema 4D. So once that's done, and I've painted in my character, and I'm really happy with it, and I get to this point, and my color channel's all good, and I'm excited. So let me go ahead and turn this on. Then I go to my sculpt menu. And now I want to sculpt this thing. And I like this idea because now I'm swapping between the two. I can go back to body paint, add more textures. I can go back to sculpt, start sculpting more, et cetera, et cetera. So in here, I'm going to choose my marquise, and I'm just going to do a quick subdivide. And it's going to put this little S tag right on it, right? If I go to my sculpting layers, I got my base. Right now, we are at 2,134 polygons. If I go ahead and hit subdivide again, and I'm just going to start increasing the polygon count, and you can see the count right here. So I'm going to get up to 500,000 polygons right here, and I'll just stop. This is my base layer. I'm going to go ahead and create a secondary layer, and I'll call this my sculpt. Now I can go into my character, and I can start doing some sculpting detail. So, if you've worked with other programs, the push and the pull work very similarly. So I'm going to bring my pressure down. I'm going to bring the size of my brush down, and I'm just going to do a little bit of sculpting. We've got a bunch of different tools. We got a knife tool, a wax tool. So let's say we take this character and we start, really just having some fun with it. Let's just get a little creative. Let's put some ripples into the neck collar. Just kind of draw on in everything. We'll go a little lower in size, and we can kind of create some edges on the sculpt. And then we can use, let's say, a wax tool. And we can increase this over here to kind of thicken things up. We've got to make sure that our symmetry is always linked. And that should work on there. So we always get both sides. So now we get a little something higher on that end. We do a pull here. And do. And I'm just going to go and try to add some really tiny, fine details. And this is not to be critiqued or have this portfolio destroyed or anything like that. This is literally just so I could show you guys some of the detail work that you can do, some of the cool things you can do. You can make some buttons. You can make even bigger indents. Yeah, that should probably go in reverse. So we'll cut that in, and we'll bring this out. And add it to little stuff like this. And let's really pull out this jewelry right here. Okay, so, we did something really simple right here, and that's, let's add some fake details just so you guys can see where this is going. All right, so let's say I created this, and I've done all the sculpting, I've brought in brushes, I've brought in all the other stuff, and I'm really happy with what I got. Let's go ahead and bake it down back to what we need it to be for a game playable object, because we're not going to bring in a 500,000 polygon game character into our video game, especially since we're building for iOS, and we know that's not going to be allowed, because at 65,000 triangles, your Unity game object starts breaking up into little pieces, so you want to keep it low. So what you all have to do is just go to Bake Sculpt Objects, and let's go find where our sculpting starts. So we're going to call this body sculpt test, just so I remember it. You can go into like a PNG format. Keep it 2048. We'll make sure that the pixel border stays really high. Turn off copy. And we got some options here. You can go and create a displacement channel, or you can create a normal channel, or you can create an ambient occlusion channel. And you can see how we're going from our source, which is our high-res mesh, down to our base source. So it knows what to bake those normals out. So let's just do our normals right here. And the last thing you got to set is from object to tangent. So go ahead and set that to tangent and hit a bake. And it should go relatively quick. I would imagine, 3 seconds right there. It goes relatively fast. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this character object right here, and I'm going to go to my sculpt right here, and I'm just going to bring my levels back down. And you can see how the geometry is slowly getting worse and worse and worse, right? And I'm just going to duplicate this character, and I'm going to turn off the sculpting tag on this particular one. And I'll go ahead and grab my sculpt, and I'll move them over to the side. Then Then for this character, I'm going to go ahead and bring him back up. So you see all the detail in this particular one. And I'm going to create another material. And inside here, I'm just going to turn on my normal channel. And inside that normal channel, I'm going to go ahead and grab my body sculpt. Let's go. Test. There you go. And hit open. And I'm going to go ahead and drag that onto my character. And I'm going to go ahead and let you see both of them together, side by side, and know that the one on the left has a total of 2,200 polygons, but the one on the right has 500,000 polygons. Perfectly acceptable video game object to bring into Unity. So let's say you've done this. You've done your sculpt, and you've spent way longer on it than I have, and you've got this beautiful model ready to go. And you want to start animating it. So let's go ahead and talk about animation. For this, there's a whole character system up here that you can use to rig your character and make them do whatever you want. For this instance, though, we decided to do something a little different and use Mixamo. Now, how many of you guys have actually used Mixamo? I'm sure like everyone has, right? It's such a great thing. All you have to do to bring anything into Mixamo is just export your object as an OBJ, import it into Mixamo, and then you can pretty much apply any animation you want to your character, and then export it out as an FBX. Once you've exported it out, one of the easiest ways, since Unity has such a great system of meshing animations together and bringing one over to another, et cetera, one of the things that's really good is to use different animations and just stack them into your scene. And then once you get your, let's say, T-pose set up, all you have to do is right-click, go to Character Tag, and choose Retarget. Now, your target is going to be your T-pose. Now, your animation, which let's say is this / right here. So I'll show that real quick, is going to go into source. And now, you've retargeted your animation for Unity. And then you literally can go through each and every one and kind of test out, hey, this one looks good. I'm going to export this out as an FBX, drop it into Cinema 4D, kind of go and run from there. Now, if you want to do something a lot more intense, let's say you have an animation where you want to do the sword swing, and then he does another thing, and another thing, and another thing, that's when you can start getting into the C-Motion system, where now you're just saving your animation tracks and then stitching them together in just a timeline feature, and then you take that whole thing and export it out, and then you set your triggers and animations in there in Unity, and then just have that play itself. So, that's how easy it is to do the animation. We did the hair here in Cinema 4D. We tried to keep everything in here natively. We didn't do any other program except for what we have in here and what we have in the base studio system. No plugins, no nothing else. We just wanted to stay in here and see if we could pull it off. Then, once we finished this, we brought this into Unity, and I kind of wanted to just show a comparison. If I delete this Game Ready version, what you would see, so we have 1, 2, 3, there's 6 materials, because this is a sky, so we really don't need to worry about that. But when we go into Unity, we are going to have a couple different objects that come in. So when we bring the FBX in, let me just kind of show you what you should be able to see. In here for CGraph, this is our model. And our model has, all the meshes and stuff inside of it. Rig, animation, materials. When you bring it in, you always want to use the external materials legacy, because that will bring in and connect your UVs to the correct set selections and everything like that. And then also, once you bring that in, a folder should appear. And this is more your materials inside that were exported from your FBX system into Unity. Then all you really need to do is take your character, which is right here. So let's go to our marquees. And we just start reconnecting some of his textures. So we reconnect his body, hair, et cetera, et cetera. Now, looking at this character model, real quick, you see that the character model has, of course, the base skeleton, which in Cinema is right here, this Mixamo rig, so it renames it. Then in here, you have your character, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 game objects, which is what our character is split into. And in Cinema, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 objects. So just to kind of show you guys what happens. Now, as a 3D designer, and my experience is that it's really important, especially if you got a guy like Jonathan, who's an amazing programmer, amazing software engineer. You want to set up your character to just be able to knock it out of the park. Him resetting up textures and everything like that, that's never too fun. So it's a good idea to always come back in and really make sure that all of his animations are in there and he's ready to play. And speaking of animations, you can even make sure and check and test out if your character retained his animations. So if you click on the character and we go ahead and go to Window, Animations, Animation. Here's our character from FBX. I'm just going to set this right here. And you could see the different animations that we brought in over here. So if you click on your character, and then you could cycle through, the Great Idol 1 and press play and make sure that his FBX is correctly sourced, or his running animation is correct and it runs in a nice little loop, or his sword swing animation as well. Real simple to do, real easy to do, really slick. So then, another thing that we did was we built this box, this crate. This crate has, and I'll show this real quick before John has a chance to show how we bring this to life. The crate is actually composed of 2 game objects. But this one is the one I want to show you, because if you guys are MoGraph people and you love using MoGraph Fracture, this whole system and all these elements are created using MoGraph fractures. So it kind of gives you ideas of how, man, I know how to splinter wood in Cinema 4D. I break all that stuff up. That would be awesome as a simulation inside of Unity in real time and have that running. So you could use certain tools in MoGraph to make something quite fantastic. Okay, so from there, we've, just to kind of wrap up, we've done the UV mapping, we've done the body paint, we've done sculpting, we've animated our character all in one program, we've exported out to Unity. From there, we set up our project, give everything running, and then we go ahead and pass that project on over to Jonathan, our sophisticated and amazing software engineer, and he's going to show you how to bring these Cinema 4D elements to life into Unity.
Cool. Thanks, Al. Alrighty. So now that we have this incredible model in Unity, what we're going to want to do here is bring it to life. So I'm just going to select our character here, and I'm just going to clean up a few things in here. So when we bring in this model as an FBX, we automatically get these animations here. And these are the animations that were created from Mixamo and brought in as an FBX. They're already attached, and you'll get this controller. The next thing I need to do here is on this crate, because we're going to also go through the experience of creating this crate and how we actually destruct it. Okay. So right now, we have 2 idle animations inside this character. And if I just run the game right now, and one more thing. So you'll see here that our character in the bottom here is just going to automatically begin to animate. So he's going to do his idle animation, and if I view in the animator here, I can see in real time what's going on. So what we want to do here, and this is where it gets really artist-friendly, is it's all visual logic. I basically just want to create transitions by right-clicking, and I want to tell it to go to its idle 2 after it plays its first animation. So here it is playing its animation, and as soon as it's done, it's just going to go to gray idle sort. And then once it's done doing that, I just want it to loop back, and it's done. That's all you had to do. From there, though, we get a little bit more sophisticated with our running. So if I actually try to run, you'll see here that our animation for running isn't hooked up. So I'm kind of just sliding across the floor like this, right? So that's obviously not what we want. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create some visual logic for when we should be running. So I'm going to right-click, and we're going to go to running from our idle animation. Now, what we can do through code is I can detect when I'm clicking on the floor. And the best part about this is if you're into programming, it's only a few lines to do that. But if you're not into programming, we've already developed tools that allow you to just drag and drop and get the exact interaction without a single line of code. So what we can do here is we can create parameters that can control this logic. So here we're going to have a bool, and it's going to be isMoving. And what we're doing behind the scenes is we're triggering this value. So when it's true, we're moving. When it's false, we're stopped. And what we can do now is select our transition, and we can create conditions on when this occurs. So here from idle, if isMoving is true, then we want to play the run animation. When do we go back to the idle? Well, we go back to the idle when isMoving is false. So you just set it to false. Likewise, when we're in idle 2, we want to make sure that we're going to run. And we want to do that if isRunning is true, or isMoving is true. So once we have those easy transitions set up, one of the things you'll also want to check here is that we turn off the has exit time. What that means is that it's waiting for that animation to finish, which is why it doesn't interrupt this animation to go to the second idle. Exit time is checked, which means it's going to play one full cycle, then move on to the next. When we're running, we want that transition to happen instantly, so we're going to go ahead and uncheck has exit time. As soon as we do that, you'll be able to see here that as we run the game, we can then run up to this box, and when we stop, or we're back in our idle. And you can see that in real time, the transitions between running and going to idle. Now, we have a trigger script here that's actually locked me in place, but let me go ahead and run that. All right, so here we go, running. We're in idle, back to running, and then idle. And no matter which state we're in, we can always go to running based on which idle we're in. So one of the other things we have here is this box, and we also have an attack animation. So we want to set up our attack animation, but first, let's go ahead and set up this box. In video games, there's a lot of smoke and mirror effects. So in an actual environment, we have a solid crate here. And you'll see here that's just one geometry and one geometrical mesh. And then here, inside the breakable crate, you have multiple fractured elements, and within that is each object. So the way it works in video games is we're actually going to swing our sword at the solid box, and in real time, we're actually going to swap these items. We're going to turn off the solid crate, and we're going to re-enable this breakable crate. So in order for this to work, we actually have to apply physics to this guy. So if I were to run this right now and turn off the solid crate here, nothing's actually going to happen to this breakable crate. It doesn't interact with our environment, and it has no colliders. So that's where the physics system comes into play in Unity, and it's so simple to apply physics to game objects. All we have to do is select each individual fragment, and we need to tell them to communicate with the physics system of Unity. And you do that through what's called a rigid body component. This is going to allow you to add mass as well as gravity to your objects. And once you have that element, we want them to interact with each other. So we're going to add what's called mesh colliders. So when we set that to convex, you can see here that now they're all intermingling here. And what's going to happen is if I run this right now, you're going to see here that one of our pieces is going to break off. All right, and that's just with a little bit of interactivity, gravity, and the mass that it's currently at. Now, if we were to take this breakable crate, and let's move it up a bit more, you'll see here that as gravity takes its toll, the velocity increases. You get a much higher destruction. So in games, what's going to happen is in real time, we have the solid crate. We're going to take the breakable crate. And let me just reset that position. So we're going to take this breakable crate, and we're going to set that to be off, and we're going to turn on the enabled solid crate. Because we want to basically swap that interaction out when that animation of its sword occurs. So here, what we need to do now is inside of our character model, we need to finish up setting up its animation state for its sword attack. So we have 2 attack animations here, and I believe one of these is a duplicate. So what we want to do here for attack is we just need to create a trigger that says we go to attack from any state. So in our game, you can swing your sword at any time. That's what any state is for. We'll make a transition, and then we just want to trigger the attack animation. Once we've done that, we need to create a parameter that's going to trigger that. So here we have an attack trigger. And then on the transition, we just want to play that attack animation whenever that trigger is called. And we have a script that's automatically going to call this trigger, and it's going to swing its sword. Once it swings the sword, we can just go back to idle. And here it has exit time checked, so it's going to do a full sword swing, then go right back. So here, if we actually run this, you'll see here in our scene, if we select our crate here, we have a zone sphere here. And what this is a trigger collider. And using like plug-and-play elements, we basically have told this guy to, hey, there's 2 game objects here. You have a solid crate and a breakable crate. All you have to do is swap them out. So here, we're going to run up to this guy. And then in real time, we're going to swing our sword, and we swap out the box. So when you get to a point where you're also wanting to get into things like cinematics and everything like that, if you're into cinematics in C4D, we've also done cinematics. You build the cinematics in C4D, and then we actually take the cinematics into Unity and rebuild it. And you can do something like this, where you can enable what's called Cinemachine, which basically gives you the ability of being a director. And what we can do here is we can go ahead and run up to this box, and then create a cinematic event for it. All right, so that is the power of bringing in C4D art into Unity. And what I want to show you guys here is a game that we just released. And you just saw the 3D creation pipeline. And what you can do with Cinema 4D as well is the entire 2D pipeline. So this game you just saw here, everything you just saw there was built in Cinema 4D, from body paint texturing to UV mapping to all the animations, built in 3D, and then animated, and then just flattened and put into Unity. That game you just saw there is available on the iOS and Android store today under Dungeon Escape. That is a course that we actually developed in Unity with Unity Technologies to promote the pipeline of getting into Unity and making 2D mobile games. And we found that Cinema 4D was the most effective pipeline to build game art, whether it's 2D, 3D, and it also leads into the world of VR-ready content and AR-ready content. So finally, our Unity partnership is on Udemy, which is an online marketplace for courses. And you can find all of our official Unity courses, as well as our newly sponsored Maxon courses, where we actually show you from zero to hero how to create game art in Cinema 4D and bring it to life in Unity. We also have our app on the iOS App Store, and directly within the app, you can actually download our courses by just clicking the Build This Game button, and it will pop up with this panel, and you'll be able to build it out. Finally, we want to thank Maxon for flying us out here to beautiful Vancouver, but I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.